talk about the fall of Ubisoft.
Brazil is in serious trouble.
Do you know how to turn one of the most beloved and respected gaming companies into a soulless corporation that everyone is fed up with? It's pretty easy. All you have to do is put microtransactions in every possible production, copy one game after another using the same pattern, make series of PR blunders, don't listen to your fans, and do it consistently for a few years, and voila! Fortunately, no one would be stupid enough to do something like that, right? One of the most recognizable gaming companies is currently experiencing one of the loudest downfalls in recent years, and the situation seems hopeless. But is it really? I took a look at what Ubisoft's situation actually looks like without all this populist bullshit about the company's decline and its bankruptcy. And yes, Ubisoft has greatly weakened its position at its own request, but talking at this point that it is over and there will be nothing but ashes to collect is just populist bullshit. And I'm not defending Ubisoft too. I just want to give you a little bit different view on that topic, okay? I want to say something different from what is being said all the time. You understand? Just by producing extremely mid-quality games, you can't fall so low from such a good position. Mr. Yves Guillemot's team worked very hard to achieve such hopeless results and position. New Ubisoft productions are no longer associated with great stealth segments and actually interesting plots, but an empty map occasionally filled with a quest that involves the same thing with a soulless characters.
Yeah, it's ass.
It is. This condition is probably best seen in the Assassin's Creed series, which has been a repetitive pattern since Origin, differing only in the setting and the protagonist. Ubisoft games are simply expensive and do not offer a good quality-to-price ratio. Star Wars Outlaws cost $70 at launch, Jedi Fallen Order was available for $30 cheaper on release day, which outclasses Ubisoft's latest production in terms of quality. And this is also evident from the number of active players in both games.
There is also Skull and Bones, which is also a great example.
Yeah, Skull and Bones, $60, the same price Microsoft's Sea of Thieves cost at launch, which also beats Ubisoft's game in terms of production quality and number of active players and by several times. And also Sea of Thieves is 6 years older. It's easy to see which game people like more. Unfortunately, problems with prices don't end here. Because imagine that you pay $60 for the game, and additionally to unlock the full story content you have to pay $85 extra.
Check out our Twitter.
Check it out. The problem is not that the creators are adding the paid content, but the fact that it is sold for twice as much as the base game cost is f***ing insane. It's insane, to say at least, okay? In addition, you can buy skins for premium currency, which you can buy for dollars, or save up for dozens of hours to be able to afford 1 or 2 sets of skins for free. But if you don't want to waste your time on it, you can always buy the season pass for $40, right? Obviously, fans didn't like it, but who cares, right? But even for this group of supporters, there comes a certain moment when it's time to say something, right? And that moment is visible, it's been gradually building, especially over the past year. PR blunders only speed up this process. Thoughtless statements about getting used to not owning games, or quietly releasing a blockchain game. Obviously to milk money from a new audience. Every big studio makes games for profit. That's logical. But the problem starts when the creators prioritize profit over the quality of the product. Such neglect was bound to eventually bring consequences which can be seen in the interest surrounding Ubisoft's latest productions. Disclaimer: game sales figures are based on estimates, guesses, and unofficial sources, so take them with a grain of salt, okay? This can be seen in the example of the aforementioned Skull and Bones. The game's development took the company 11 years and reportedly cost, according to the unofficial source, of course, an astronomical $650 to $850 million. Yet, according to leaks again, less than 1 million copies were sold in the first week, which for a product of this scale was a significant failure. For comparison, Sea of Thieves, with incomparably lower production costs, sold over 1 million copies on its first day. Add to that the flop that was Star Wars Outlaws, with production costs estimated at $200 to $300 million, and its sales results deemed disappointing. Ubisoft itself admitted that Star Wars Outlaws' initial sales proved softer than expected. In plain language, that basically means that sales are flat and there's no sign of them picking up anytime soon. There was also this one game, X-Defiant, and to put it shortly, it was a massive flop, but we'll come back to that in a moment. To be fair, even though not every game was total failure, among the middling ones, you could count Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, which received mixed reviews. Then there's Assassin's Creed Mirage, a game that was more like a mini addition to the series with a smaller budget. It also got mixed reviews, but in 3 months it sold around 5 million copies, which wasn't a terrible result, especially considering it was cheaper to produce than its predecessors. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown has really gotten very positive reviews, selling about 1.3 million copies, which is not that impressive compared to bigger productions, but for games of a much smaller caliber, it is a good result. Despite this, the game did not meet Ubisoft's expectations and was abandoned. To understand Ubisoft's situation, we need to know what it really earns from. It seems like an obvious question, but it needs some elaboration. The main source of Ubisoft's income is, of course, game sales. Nothing particularly surprising there. We all know that in recent years they haven't been doing very well in this area. I would separate the live service game Rainbow Six Siege here, which despite many years on the gaming market continues to perform very well and consistently generates revenue for the company through microtransactions. We can't overlook the microtransactions in single-player games, which have been heavily integrated lately. Given their abundance, they likely represent a noticeable portion of the company's revenue. Then we have the Ubisoft Plus subscription, which hasn't achieved significant success, and it's hard to be surprised when the competition like Xbox Game Pass seems more cost-effective, offering not only Ubisoft's more popular titles, but also, hundreds of other games for just a few dollars more. I'm mentioning this so no one gets the wrong impression that 99% of the company's revenue comes from the latest releases. That would be weird, right? That's a significant part, but the revenue streams are certainly not that centralized. It's worth remembering that even when game sales are mediocre, the company still generates income from the other sources. Ubisoft was well aware that the future of the company largely depended on the sales performance of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Unfortunately for them, they realized this too late and tried to fix it just before the release by delaying the launch. Now it's becoming clear that the sales results are average, if not outright poor. Developers contributed to this outcome for months. For instance, in a game set in ancient Japan, one of the two protagonists players can choose a Yasuki, a black samurai, despite no evidence confirming he was ever a samurai. Hey man, listen, say what you want to say, but when I'm thinking of typical character from Japan, an African American doesn't come to my mind. And yet, if this were the main inconsistency in the production, we would be having a different conversation entirely. Ubisoft made several PR blunders even before the premiere. For example, they announced the delayed release date of March 20th, which coincided with the date of the Tokyo subway terrorist attacks. Or take the collector's edition figurine featuring a one-legged Torii gate symbolizing the Nagasaki bomb banks. It's no surprise that there's a widespread boycott of this production, which has significantly limited the game's sales. Ubisoft claims that 2 days after the release, the game attracted 2 million players. Well, we cannot verify this, but we do have hard data from Steam. Nearly 65,000 players at the peak concurrent moment is an average result, but better than might have been expected. A week after the launch, the game has 40% fewer players. The next week, there are already 50% less than at launch, and a month later, there are 85% less people playing it. Looking at it more broadly, it was the best result for a launch on Steam in the history of Assassin's Creed series games. The problem is that it is also one of the fastest drops in active players in the history of this brand on Steam. We don't know what the number of active players will look like in some time, but for now, it is comparable to the results of a game from the series from 7 years ago, which is not tragedy, but it will not provide Ubisoft with a large injection of cash. The budget for Assassin's Creed Odyssey was $500 million. Considering the game came out 6 years ago, production costs have surely increased since then. We likely won't know the exact figure, but it's reasonable to estimate a cost increase of at least from $100 to $200 million. Given the current player activity trends on Steam, it doesn't seem likely that such a figure will be recouped anytime soon. Assassin's Creed games tend to sell well over time, so Ubisoft might expect a return on this game only in the long term. This doesn't offer much hope for saving the company from further cost-cutting measures. In Ubisoft's latest annual report, it writes that the game's results were generally satisfactory. We learned that the game performed worse on the first day than Assassin's Creed Valhalla, all platforms combined. However, it did better than Valhalla on PlayStation. They also plan to add a new paid expansion in the future. Unfortunately, for some reason, they did not provide the results of the Assassin's Creed brand, but only combined the results of the Rainbow Six Siege brand. You can guess why. Listen, you have to check out Bofo's Twitter, okay? Just go there, it'll be worth it. Follow it, go there and follow it. And speaking of results, let's see how the turmoil of the past year affected the company's finances. We will take a look at the last two reports because there the consequences of the board's decision-making errors began to be visible in black and white. We are immediately greeted by a table with astonishing results for the last 9 months. Sales down by over 30% compared to the previous year. But that's just the beginning, because then we have the table with the results for the third quarter, where it's even worse because the year-on-year drop is almost 50%. And finally, Ubisoft predicts sales for the year at 1.9 billion euros. Comparing the results to the annual report, which still missed the final result, which was lower by 150 million euros. This was the first clear sign on paper that results were starting to weaken, and the direction taken by Yves Guillemot's team was leading to deeper declines, and the upcoming annual report was only going to confirm this. On May 14th, the long-awaited report for 2024 saw the light of day, and what can I say is revenues are falling, and quite significantly, because by about 18%, which is a clear signal that previous games did not perform as they should have. Additionally, the amount of free cash is decreasing, which is quite natural at a time when something has to be used to service the debt when revenues are falling. On a positive side, I can say that they managed to reduce short-term liabilities and maintain liquidity. If the deal with Tencent goes through, it will help stabilize the company. The company continues to cut costs and needs to continue to do so to maintain liquidity. But in the flood of negative information, we forget what a giant Ubisoft actually is. The company has about 40 branches, employees over 18,000 people, has studios in like 20 countries, has almost 40 years of experience in the gaming market. Some people, downplay the fact that it is not some local French studio of games, but actually like huge corporation. I'm saying this because 1, I would like you to keep this in mind throughout the entire video, and 2, Ubisoft has the resources to cut costs. It has the means to limit expenses and is able to close down less important studios to increase its chances of surviving in a crisis. In fact, they are already doing it. We are going back to X-Defiant for a moment because when it turned out to be a flop, they decided to close the servers down instead of burning money investing in a project with no potential, which I must admit makes a lot of sense and is a rarity in Ubisoft's recent. They closed down a Ubisoft Leamington side studio employing 185 people to support the production of their flagship games. They managed to reduce costs by 200 million euros with the goal of reducing it by another 100 million euros. And they reduced their workforce by 1,200 people in a year. In the event of even more serious liquidity problems, the company may decide to sell one of the franchises to shore up its balance. We are talking here about the already mentioned Assassin's Creed series, whose roots date back to 2007 and which, according to Ubisoft, has generated 4 billion euros in revenue in the last decade. In addition, the well-known Far Cry franchise also has a rich history and potentially great value, as well as other recognizable brands such as Tom Clancy's Prince of Persia, Watch Dogs, or Just Dance. This is in a sense what happened with the creation of the subsidiary with Tencent, the creation of which was announced just a week after the release of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Tencent's contribution amounts to 1.16 billion euros. This move gives food for thought as to how well the sales of the latest game meet the expectations of the board. Yves Guillemot probably sees that Assassin alone will not pull the company out of the hole and will have to give a few percent of some of its assets to stay in the game. And so it happened. On March 27th, the establishment of a subsidiary with Tencent was announced, which will include brands such as Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, Ubisoft's strongest IPs, basically. Tencent will hold a 25% stake in the company, but Ubisoft will retain full control over the company. Leadership Council will be established to oversee the company's operations. I personally believe that this is how Tencent will keep an eye on the French. The plan is to focus on game services using well-known brands to make money from long-running multiplayer games, not single-player games. To sum up, Tencent wants to take Ubisoft by the throat and create a game service, maybe sound like Fortnite or Roblox, to make money from microtransactions and constantly added content, stuff like that. And here comes a plot twist, because shareholders did not like this decision. AJ Investments, a hedge fund, even threatened to sue and wrote an open letter. It turned out that the decision to establish a subsidiary was made without notifying shareholders. In addition, the operations carried out by Guillemot Brothers Limited, Ubisoft's largest shareholder, are intriguing. They sold some shares to Tencent for 80 euros per share and then bought them back for 19 euros per share. It comes to mind that Tencent simply lent a large sum to the French through this transaction. After 2 months, I have not found any update on this matter, so it is not known whether the investors actually took legal action. Alright, we have the entire Ubisoft chart on a monthly basis, and what immediately catches the eye are these 3 large drops. Based on them, I drew a symbolic trend line and comments on each of them. The first drop was caused by, among other things, the bursting of the dot-com bubble, which reached as much as minus 92%. Then the effect of the Great Recession, which resulted in a drop of minus 90%. And then the current bear market, which reached over minus 92%. The price has reacted from this trend line twice in the past, and this time has also stopped there for now. Looking closer, we can see that for now it doesn't look like the downtrend is going to reverse. For months, we've been seeing lower peaks and troughs. In recent weeks, we've also seen a double bounce from the support zone, but we haven't managed to break higher peaks, which is not a positive sign for now. In my opinion, we will probably see another test of support, which would have to end with a strong rebound to give a clear chance of a trend reversal, or we will go down to the support between 6.5 and 6 euros. And then there is the support zone between 4.5 and 5 euros. However, if the price were to increase, we would expect a slowdown in a range between 18 and 19 euros. Returning to the monthly interval, in the long term, we saw growth of almost 2,900% between 2011 and 2018. And from 2002 to 2007, 1,800%. Currently, most important thing from the technical side is that the price does not fall below the trend line. So far, it has managed to stay above despite temporary drops. Therefore, a lot can still happen here. And what is my opinion? Knowing all the weaknesses and risks facing this company, I think that if you think that Ubisoft will not go bankrupt, it will go through a difficult period of restructuring and cost-cutting in order to start producing games effectively under the watchful eye of a Chinese giant, that it is worth considering throwing this company into a risky basket in your investment portfolio. For example, the latest report indicates that after a disastrous previous year, the company is still profitable, which speaks well of it. In addition, it is also paying off debt. Then, over €1 billion from Tencent will help the company maintain liquidity and produce new games. Taking all these things into account, at the moment I can draw 3 more or less possible scenarios. In a positive scenario, the management's predictions come true, and after a difficult 2025, the company starts producing games effectively again under Tencent's supervision, doing well in 2026. In a neutral scenario, the restructuring does not bring the intended effects and Ubisoft exits the IPO. The potential gain-loss would not be significant. On the negative side, cost-cutting and restructuring again does not bring results. UBI goes bankrupt and sells its IPs to cover its debts to creditors. It all depends on how you assess the durability of this company over a period of a year or two. And I know the video is mainly critical of this company, but that's how it's supposed to be. I wanted to show without sugarcoating what the situation really looks like in my opinion, and at the same time not following the crowd of people who predict their downfall all the time. Ubisoft may survive, maybe rebuild, or maybe simply die, as a company whose biggest enemy is not its competitors, but itself.